We have never, as creatures, invested as much capital and resources and energy into anything ever as we have done in the last 6 months with AI. We spent, I've heard this isn't a verified number, but let's pretend it's true. I've read recently, we spent as much on AI in the last 6 months as our entire consumer spending.
Welcome to Provocative Conversations from Twice 5 Miles Radio. I'm your host, James Navé. You just heard a snippet of some of the thoughts PJ Ewing offers us in this conversation. PJ and I have known each other for many years. We reach back to early days in New York, just like this conversation reaches back to times when the analog systems were at play. And PJ and I go forward 400 years speculating on what might happen if we can make it another 400 years. Our conversation begins with PJ talking about how much he values audio in podcasting.
For me, it's so maddening, Navé, because this is your craft. This is what you offer. You offer audio. And if you can't make your audio high quality, what are you doing?
I am absolutely in that same place.
Yeah.
I do have a lot of people who come on to the interviews with me and they don't have the same gear you have. And yet it doesn't matter because, as you say, both you and I and anybody who takes this very seriously, we can fix it. When you fix it so that it works and then it goes out over the air, it's going to work in the ears of the listeners because they can tell that you tried, even though sometimes it's a little weak here and there. You can't do anything about that with the person on the other end.
We're very forgiving. Remember the pandemic and cats walking in the background and children and all kinds of nonsense going on MSNBC, mind you. I mean, we all learned, oh gosh, people can broadcast from home and things are going to happen and we get it. But even then, I was a little maddened by the highest quality broadcasting and we would hear echo and weirdness. And you could have just sent them a mic. I mean, you could have fixed it. And a lot of this stuff can be fixed afterward. And I just think that we all have the technology. As I just pointed out, the mic that I'm using is state of the art and it's $250, $270 one-time purchase. There's no excuse anymore for having poor audio, just none.
And when you have this mic and you connect it to the rest of your equipment, what are you connecting it to and how are you making it work in a way that's balanced and acceptable for audio production?
So it's just this microphone. It's an upgraded version. There's another mic that the industry's been using, which has XLR inputs, and it takes another booster, and it takes a few other pieces of little boxes that end up connecting it to your computer. In this case, it's just one unit. I'm like an ad for sure right now. And by the way, every time I look at anybody now, I see my microphone, now that I'm aware of it. Even the ones when you use AI, put people in a professional microphone, and it's exactly my microphone. It's the same one. So what I do is I just plug it right into my M4 Mac Mini, and then I do the recordings. And then I go into Adobe Audition, and Adobe Audition allows me to clean up and use a parametric equalizer and adjust the audio to fit my voice. In a pinch, when I have two channels of audio, I will run my guest's audio in Adobe Enhanced Speech, or I'll use a thing called Auphonic, AUPHONIC, and those offer me all kinds of controls. One of them costs a little bit per recording, and the other one is it's relatively free.
I've been using a Hollyland mic connected to my iPhone. It's a Bluetooth mic, hangs around the neck, professional level for video. And if I shoot video and use the Hollyland mic, it broadcasts to my iPhone and onto the video at 25 feet. It's quite long.
Wow.
And then the microphone is rich and professional, and I can use the video as a sound file. There's a lot of ways of going about this. And I'm glad we're talking about this because people listening are interested in podcasting. Podcasting is something that is dramatically popular right now, and yet not as easy maybe to break into as people might think it is. What are your thoughts on that?
You have to have a unique perspective. You have to have something to say. You have to, in my opinion, in today's world, you have to go to a niche. If you are narrow and can focus in on something that you think is different, unique, you can offer that other people can't offer, I think you then have a leg to stand on. If you're doing a lot of really general interviews, as rich and wonderful as they are, and there's value in any human conversation. But in terms of building a following and getting popular, it's much harder because a lot of people are in that space. So if you go, I have a podcast that's all about knee surgery recovery, specifically for a business purpose. I've had it for 7 years. It's called the Bee's Knees podcast. And I've done that for marketing reasons. And no one's in that space. So I still remain very unique in its reaches. If I have 600 listens a month, I'm happy about it. But I know that those 600 people really need what I have to say or my guests have to say. If you're general, I think you're in a little bit more trouble because I just got a heck of a lot of competition. I don't know, Navé, do you listen to a lot of podcasts yourself? I do a lot of listening on my end.
I do listen to a fair amount of podcasts, probably not as many as you do, mostly because I have lots and lots of creative work I have to do with the Imaginative Storm project. So I have time to listen. But I listen to the major ones, The Daily, Ezra Klein Show, On the Media, Underworld, which is hosted by Sean Williams and Danny Gold, all about, well, the underworld. The drug dealers, the cartels, the people who scam, the old school mobsters from way back when, all the way up to what's going on right now. And they really do cover a great deal of ground. I have a number of others that I listen to as well. I listen to Fresh Air. I also listen to a number of the New York Times podcasts.
Hard Fork is a good one.
I listen to Hard Fork. I listen to Planet Money. I listen to Making Sense, The Opinions.
It's funny as the New York Times grows, and they're having a great moment financially right now. Like they are killing it. It's really because they have taken, well, why is a big question, but one of the reasons is they've taken a view of we are no longer a newspaper. We are a media company. And that media company, one of their primary outlets is podcasting. And so I'm listening to those like you are. Not quite as many of those that you've mentioned, but I'm highly aware of what they're doing. And I really enjoy. I will suggest a couple. What happened to me, Navé, just for 2 seconds, was that on election night, when things went, in my opinion, the wrong way, I needed to cut myself off because it was so upsetting what was going on politically. So since that moment, I have not consumed any unconsciously political media. So that meant that my diet, my 3-year diet of MSNBC all the time, every podcast, hours and hours and hours, that literally stopped. And I lost all my friends. I lost all my Rachel Maddows and all my, everybody. And so suddenly I had this time to fill, and I've been pursuing different podcasts ever since. And it's a little frustrating because it was really easy to just flip on those podcasts versions of their shows. Audio, it was just their show, just an audio. And I would just have this constant information train going on. Very biased, got it. It was my diet. Now I'm listening to stuff that's far afield from that. It's much richer and much more interesting. And I'm a much more interesting person because I'm getting all this other information now,
So give me some examples of what you're listening to that pull you in.
Well, Neil deGrasse Tyson and Star Talk Radio, one of the great podcasts, funny, clever, and incredibly informative about space. This is going to be about the cosmos and all the things that go with that. And there's a super massive podcast, which is a British people doing similar stuff, all with access to scientists and radio telescope people and NASA people. I am now really loving that. Mac Break Weekly. I listened to this 3-hour podcast about the world of Apple and Mac and the things that they're developing, the threats, the advantages. It gets a little tiring after a while. You kind of have to take a little diet, but that's another one. I would say that Kara Swisher and Scott Galloway, incredibly popular and really, really entertaining, irreverent. She's gay and he's got a foul mouth, and they have this crazy weird chemistry. It's called Pivot, Pivot. We'll never miss that one, for instance. I look and find more and more of them from friends that I know, people that I know, little podcasts, very narrow little things. I'll tell you, Navé, that you'd love one of my truly favorites. It's less frequent, but I still consume it every single time. It's called 20,000 Hertz, Hertz, Dallas Taylor. And he is an audio engineer. He's got his own audio company. They make jingles and audio soundscapes and video game sounds and stuff. And he does phenomenal work. Each couple weeks, let's call it, he does a fabulously well-produced podcast. The Radio Vagabond, a guy from Denmark, spent the last 10 years of his life letting podcasting pay for his life. He is an audio nerd. He travels the world, and the advertising on his podcast as a vagabond, as a digital nomad, they like to call themselves, he is in different countries, constantly traveling on cruises, minding his budget. He's not a wealthy guy, but he's interviewing people about their travels who are like him. They're just traveling all the time. That's a great show, beautifully produced. I listen to audio very, very carefully. That's why I have such little patience for poor audio, because you can do it really well if you want to, if you put your mind to it. And he's one of those people that does a really nice presentation of his podcast in addition to just great content. I mean, I could go on, I won't, but if you cut off maybe some of your mainstays, and I do like Ezra Klein, although it's kind of political, so I've got to be careful about that one.
You do.
I do find that there are unique little channels, little narrow bands of communication on very specific topics that are very enriching. I mean, I have to be honest, I'm not as smart as I used to be, because I did cancel my New York Times. I couldn't see the word Donald Trump 50 times a day and get mad every time I checked in. So I canceled the Times many, many months ago. I really rely on audio as my window. It's informing me on really what's going on in the world. It's a flawed, inaccurate presentation of the world, but I've kind of crafted and protected my brain from the stupidity of our era, of our age, that way. That's my only defense to the madness, I guess, that's going on.
That's interesting. I did not find myself dramatically undone with the arrival of Donald Trump. I have been always a Trump antagonist. I am not impressed with what he does. Mm-hmm. I think we are definitely moving in a direction that we will find some rough seas in front of our boats. That said, I understand when these kinds of momentous things happen, I have to pay attention to the environment across the board. I do listen to the New York Times. Ross Douthat, I think is the way he says his name. He does a podcast called Interesting Times, and he is a right-wing Republican journalist, and he has people on there, many of whom are from the right, and he has plenty of people on there from the left as well. And I have to give this guy credit for keeping his cards close to his chest regarding his political stances when he pursues these people on the right. So I'm trying to listen to the people on the right, the people on the left, the people in the middle, as if I agree with them rather than disagree with them. Now, I hold my own positions. And sometimes on the right, I'm going like, yeah, I can see your point. But most of the time, a lot of what the right-wing people say doesn't hold water for me in my own thinking, but I'm still able to listen and understand. I am trying to use that information in creative ways to help other people view the world, like through this podcast. Maybe we can help people view the world in a way that balances them out, harmonizes them a bit, doesn't bring them into so much panic.
I admire that ability. And when I do speak with people, and I do through the work that I do, because I sometimes am on the phone with people from all walks all over the country with their issues or things, and I'm having a conversation, I don't judge. And when they want to go political, I won't. I love literature. I do a lot of audio book. I love film. I love TV. I do a lot of consumption of fiction. And I've always been good, Navé, at suspending disbelief. And so it becomes so real. I throw myself in and I lose the fact that I'm in a movie theater or listening, and I'm on Mars and I'm with those people with their struggles. I'm throwing myself into the thing I'm consuming. And if you do that in the political world, boy, do you get upset quickly. You see the gyrations of politicians or bad actors or whatever's going on. And I think that might be related to how upset I can get, because I've really thrown my mind into the topic.
For me, I don't get upset like you're describing.
Mm-hmm.
I feel profoundly disappointed which is maybe a different kind of upset.
Yeah.
But I'm disappointed. I'm thinking, my goodness, this could go in such a more productive, harmonious direction. Human beings have so much to offer each other. If only we could somehow cease all of this head banging that we seem to have been doing since the beginning of the first fire, I think. I don't know.
Did you ever hear or consume, watch, listen to originally a Chinese series of novels, The Three Body Problem? It's quite profound, and I won't ruin it for anyone, but it's really worth consuming. Season 1 is done. It's going to take another year and a half to get season 2. So I started listening to the novels because I couldn't wait. I'm like, I don't have all this time to sit around and wait years for them to produce season 2. But in the end, it's aliens coming to this planet, and the time frame is 400 years. So we have communicated with aliens 30, 40 years ago through this radio telescope. And we said, hey, come on over. Where they said, okay, we're coming. And they were able to get something into our world where they could communicate with us way early. But it's still going to take them 400 years to get here. So we've got many, many generations of preparation. And one of the answers to this alien race that has professed they're going to eradicate us and colonize and live here, one of the answers from humans was, thank you for coming. We welcome you. We understand you're going to get rid of all of us and that we're all going to die, but we welcome that because we're not good at running our own society. As I listen to that and I look at the way we try to govern and the flaws of our governance over the last 10,000 years, 5,000 years, I can understand it. I'm not saying I agree with it, but I can understand the disappointment, using your word, in how humans manage themselves. We're so awesome. We're so creative. We are so smart. We can do these marvelous, blow your mind things. We're in an age of creation. We've never seen a time like we have right now. But man, are we lousy at running our society. And we don't seem to get better at it. We're just as bad now as we were back in horrific times in our past. I don't think we're ever going to get any better at it. I don't have hope that we're going to figure out how to govern fairly and balance the poor and the rich. And I don't expect that we're going to anymore. There's a disappointment there. I could use bigger words than that, stronger words than that, but I don't have faith that we can sort out how to run our governments, our societies well. I don't think we can. And that's very, very sad.
And yet, when I look at local situations, I see models that tend to work fairly well. For example, here in Taos, where I'm talking to you now, or in Asheville. I spend a lot of time in Asheville. The show airs in both places. The local community, it has its problems. A lot of things in Taos you can complain about. It also has a cohesiveness that seems to hold together. So when I drive from where I am now, 12 miles into town, I go shopping and buy gasoline, visit a few friends, it holds together. It seems to govern itself reasonably well.
You've got a good point there.
If you go to Asheville, you will discover the Ashevilleans, after Hurricane Helene last year, now we're moving almost into a full year later,
right,
are still dealing with it. When you talk to the people who have been there and the people who have dealt with it for the last year, you find folks still helping folks. I was there recently with Jennifer Pickering. And my buddy Walter Parks and I were there. You know Walter and you know Jennifer. We went to the Swannanoa town gathering, which was held in one of the churches. 30 people showed up the day we were there. They've been showing up every week since Hurricane Helene, sitting in the circle for 2 hours saying, how can we help each other? Taking notes and actually helping. Not just people, but businesses are there as well, representing the interest of the business as well as hoping to upgrade the interest of the community. So the governance is happening, and that is the opposite of disappointment. That's really heartening.
A wonderful point.
We have both. Now, what in the world do we do with it, and how do we harmonize all of that? We may not.
I think you're making a case for the opposite of the United States, or looking at Europe as one thing, or other larger governments. I think you're making a case for the small city-state where you have a finite reach and you can decide on a certain method of governance that is more hands-on. And you look at some of the more successful countries in the world, countries now, beyond these smaller village-like situations that you've described, and you see that the happiest people, those measurements, right, they're always really small countries. Norway, Singapore, the Nordic nations. I mean, they're smaller. Canada does relatively well on that scale. These are much smaller experiments than the 355 million and these very disparate states. And I've never been one to advocate for the breakdown of the United States. I've believed in that dream. We've all believed in that dream that we are one, we're stronger together, but we're not proving that now. And I don't think, at least at this point in our growth, that we have improved over 200 plus years and become closer together. We have become farther apart from one another, particularly in the era of all this communication. 30 years ago, maybe we had a real reason to think that Texas and California and New York feel like they're part of the same thing. Now those feel like three very different parts of the nation that will never get along. It's very pessimistic. I've heard sci-fi / theorists say it will break up into three regions, this nation. And you will have a Northeast that's liberal, a West Coast that's relatively liberal, a center and maybe Southeast and Southwest that is conservative. And they are trading with one another, but they are not united. I could almost imagine that with the way that I look at them and they look at me and goes down, how angry we are with each other. How would we ever reconcile? Can we? I'm not sure we can. I'm not sure we can either, because I think what you described has already happened. The states are united by state lines, and they're united by a great deal of similarities. I've probably, in the last 30 years, driven 2 million miles across America, covered this territory as much as a small scale truck driver. No shade on any of those truck drivers. My gosh, they can clock out 5 million miles or something. The point is, I've covered the territory, and I know the rhythm of what unites us, the rhythm of cooperation when you're out there on the highway, the rhythm of the road itself and the thin lines that carry us from one place to another. The chain stores like Walmart, Target, McDonald's, the Subway, Country Cooking, all of these places, they are gathering places, almost shrines to the united sensibilities of Americana. On the other hand, California has a very, very different vibe. I live in Taos. Taos is a very liberal town. You go 50 miles west, you will find the opposite of that. So this country has already taken its positions, whether it wants to claim it officially or not. The question now is, how can you and I as leaders, and anybody listening to this radio show, perhaps you consider yourself a leader too, wherever you are, how can we go out into the world and interact with the people along the way so that we represent a harmonious sensibility? And I'm not speaking high level of consciousness here. I'm speaking just straight up manners. Good morning. Thank you very much. How are you? Acknowledge eye to eye, not anything particularly dynamic. Can we do that? Are we able to do that? Are we willing to do that? Now, that won't bring the states together, and yet it might add something, recognizing and listening. One of your podcasts that you listened to, I think it was The Daily. It was within the last month. It was about, when we're talking about pulling funding, we've pulled funding from local radio. And it was a little station in Alaska. Does it ring a bell?
I heard it. I listened to it. Yeah.
Isn't that lovely? And they were wrestling with those same things because it was the national NPR feed that had a lot of those local residents up in arms. But when it came down to the local stuff, they were fine. They did a swap meet, if you remember. They did like, hey, I've got an old chicken coop. If anyone needs one, it's $1. Come on down and pick it up. It was the way to communicate in a very dispersed, broad, large area for Alaska. One little communications, the Wi-Fi doesn't work. Cell phones don't work. You only have the radio. The radio was uniting, but it was also just this small community got along just fine. It was the national politics that got them bent out of shape and mad at everybody. It's true what you say about local. I don't expect that I'm going to convince anybody. I don't think they're going to convince me of much in terms of the way we run our government. And that's where the frustrations really come. Breaking it down into smaller pieces. I mean, in the end, it could be fine, right? The only thing that's potentially is upsetting in terms of borders and controls and sections of our nation is when you start looking at guns. We had a bad shooting here in New York City a week ago. It was in Park Avenue. It was at the NFL. I've been in that building. I've been on that floor. I mean, I know exactly where they were when the gunman, upset about CTE, went in there and started killing people. And one of the politicians, the new young guy who's trying to get elected, was saying, I can't control guns that are purchased in other states with easy policy to purchase guns. I can't stop that. We don't have any border. We can have great gun policies in this part of the world and not let people go out there and buy semi-automatic and da-da-da. It does not protect us. So when it comes to stuff like that, there are soft borders, but I'll drive to Pennsylvania. I can drive anywhere in this country without anybody stopping me at the gate. And I could see that if things continue to go in directions where arms are widely available and a region of the country is trying to protect itself, that you do have checks at the border. I'm surprised it isn't happening right now. If I go into Texas, I go into California, go into New York, and they have very different policies on arms, how have they not done that already? I'm kind of shocked that we haven't gone that far, because we all feel so differently about arms, semi-automatic or automatic weapons. And I think that will come, because there's a certain point where people do get so upset that these mass shootings happen that they say, we have to stop that here. The only way we can do that is to control arms coming into this state or this region.
On that note, Malcolm Gladwell has a podcast called Revisionist History. And Revisionist History produced a 4 or 5 part series on American gun culture.
Oh, wow. Recently?
It's last couple of years, maybe 3
Okay.
years. It's quite extensive.
Huh.
And he brings a journalist sensibility to it. And he starts out by describing the reason why we're so gun-centric in America is because of the TV show Gunsmoke.
Huh.
And he makes a terrific case. And he says during the 50s and the 60s, and that's when I was watching Gunsmoke. I watched it. Marshall Dillon, Kitty, who owned the saloon, Chester, his sidekick, ran Dodge City. Dodge City, according to Gunsmoke, was the most bloodthirsty, deadliest town in the West. As it turned out, Malcolm Gladwell did some research, found out, no, the murder rate wasn't any higher in Dodge City than it was elsewhere. This is the myth of Dodge City. Marshall Dillon settled every dispute with every bad guy with a pistol for 20 years.
Wow.
Everybody watched this man deal with the bad guys with a gun. And Malcolm Gladwell says that embedded itself in the sensibilities of Americans. And to this day, they still think about that, even if they're not aware of it. And then he went on to talk to people who own guns and people who advocate for guns and people who love gun safety and people who love guns and people who think guns are the greatest sculpted things ever. And they collect them and they're worth thousands and thousands and tens of thousands of dollars, no different than guitars or cars or whatever else anybody collects. And then he goes on to talk about how the murder rate in America is low now, not because people aren't shooting each other, but because the trauma centers are more skilled and they can save people. So they're no longer dying. So the people who shoot these people aren't charged with murder. They're charged with manslaughter, which is a lesser charge. And he does a terrific view.
Oh, I need to hear that.
Of how we as a people interact with guns. It establishes quite well the multiple layers of psychology that brings people into their positions around guns.
That I would say that the lawman, whether it's modern, futuristic, today's culture, the people that solve the problem quickly, efficiently, they don't go to the courts. They don't try to solve it through normal legal means. They just solve it the hard way with a gun. Those are our heroes on film. That is part of our culture. And I would say that it may not be called Gunsmoke anymore, but it is alive and well in everything that we're consuming when it comes to any kind of difficulties. We do turn to the gun. I love that theory, though, and it makes a lot of sense. It is part of our culture. It's normal. We're expecting someone to find a handgun and use it in some clever way. You know, it's part of every plot now, it seems.
And I grew up in Asheville. I grew up outside of Asheville in the country. I grew up in the 50s. I remember many Sundays after church, we would go to my grandfather's house, who lived down the lane. We would have Sunday dinner, chicken roasted, harvested from the chickens in the backyard. What you would expect from a country Sunday dinner. Sometimes it was fried, sometimes it was baked.
Delicious, though.
Oh, well, I mean, come on, really. In the corner always stood my grandfather's 12-gauge shotgun, leaning against the wall. My brothers and I admired the shotgun. The boys that came around in our group all knew about Pappy's shotgun, and he would take us out hunting. And I even have a home movie my father shot, an actual movie that he constructed of my grandfather taking my brother David and me squirrel hunting with his 12-gauge. David and I carried wooden guns. Pappy carried the 12-gauge shotgun that was a pump, built in 1893 or something.
Wow.
And we shoot the same squirrel over and over because it's a movie. Grandfather had a squirrel he had shot earlier hunting. And so
where's that gun now, Navé?
Oh,
it's out there somewhere, right?
The gun fell apart. My brother has it. It fell apart. It just ceased to work. And it was a common gun, not a collectible gun at all.
Unless you're more on the fringe, I don't think anybody has a problem with hunting for the most part. I mean, okay, killing animals, vegetarianism. Okay, I get it. But in general, there's no battle line there. Everyone's okay with hunting permit, go hunting. We keep the populations of animals under control. This is all lovely. It's the right to bear arms is not the question. It's what kind of arms and how dangerous those arms are. Our battle lines are a little askew right now because everyone takes everything to the extreme. Everyone's got a gun. No one's got a gun. Well, that isn't really the choice.
What I'd like to illustrate with the story of my grandfather's shotgun. When I turned 12, my father gave me a single shot 20-gauge shotgun.
Yeah.
I was 12. And when you turned 12 in the 50s in the country, you got a shotgun. It was a rite of passage. And once he handed me the shotgun and I held it, I felt grown up. Now, I wasn't grown up. I had no idea what to do with it. Foolish me, not long thereafter, I decided to take my shotgun on a Saturday morning, no hunting license, completely illegal, go down into the pasture below the house and see if I could find something to shoot. A rabbit, maybe, some quail, maybe, who knows? The boy with his gun. And I see a covey of quail in the underbrush. Little ones, big ones.
Okay.
I get so excited that I just raise my gun and shoot into the covey of quail. And I run down to these birds, and there they are flopping around on the ground. And the feeling that overcame me, I still sense. It was this deep disappointment in how unfair I had been. And I realized I had broken the cardinal rule of all hunters, shooting the birds on the ground. And the poor birds flopped around, looked up at me, and all I wanted to do was to go back in time,
undo that,
and undo it. And I simply could not. And that was the first time I realized that I was truly, 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 profoundly in the wrong. And it sticks with me to this day. I don't tell that story much, but when I tell it like this, I feel it.
Yeah.
So our gun culture in America has ritual embedded in it. It's the rite of passage, the need to protect and honor those that are close to you. Vengeance comes into mind. The Americana violence plays into it. So those guns that we own or don't own or exist in the glove compartments symbolize all of that. Each person has his or her own connection to them. And over their lifetime, the relationship to those ideas evolves and changes.
And we shouldn't be surprised that it's evolved the way it has. And it's now accepting of these powerful weapons, these weapons of war. It isn't us, shouldn't be a surprise. Our culture is evolving and changing. I had a profound conversation this morning in a breakfast meeting with a client of mine about how relationships are evolving and how we talk about AI and how that's changing right before our very eyes. It's changing our culture in terms of relationships and the change on the way we interact. The New York Times today, I did get a headline because I still get their emails, was all about men and how women don't look at men the same. They don't rely on men for emotional support or for relationships as much, and how many, many more women are finding themselves divorced with children. And there's a crisis among men because men are looking inward. They feel disenfranchised. It's being written about everywhere you go now. It's a major part of our conversation is about how men understanding themselves and their relationships and their roles is changing. Just like the gun world and the evolution from Gunsmoke to today now, our gun culture, the culture of our country embraces the weapon, and it's just various reasons. It's part of who we are as Americans. Our social interactions and our relationships are also on the move. We've already probably seen that they've evolved to where we don't like transgender, we don't like gay culture. We're upset with the way men and women are meeting each other and interacting and not marrying and having sexual relationships without the covenant of marriage. I mean, all these changes in a very short period of time. You can see how so many people have really been out of shape, and how if you just start projecting forward, we will not, you and I won't be around. It will not be recognizable how people interact with one another. And I've read some science fiction and they spin it forward 200 or 300, 400, 500 years. And you start looking at some of those big brains, imagining what would happen if we go along these certain trends. And it's profoundly different the way humans interact in the future. Let's not just be surprised. Things are going to keep changing. And even you and me start saying, well, when I was a kid, it was different. Don't be surprised. We're in a crazy changing world right now.
I think it's profoundly different now because it has to be. We are now living on a planet with 8 billion people. When I was born, maybe we had 2 billion, maybe 2.5 billion,
right.
Not 8 billion. People by nature are change agents. We create as we move forward in dramatically imaginative ways, and we make things and we experiment and we revise and we make more things and we destroy things. And then we make more and we destroy and we make. And it's a species imperative that may be built into us to finally conclude our species. We may just conclude ourselves with our making, or the other direction, the second road in the road not taken. Which road do you take? Second direction, we may be in the shambles of this great experiment called humanity. And in the shambles, with all of this confusion, guns included, we could be generating in a direction that will form those things you're talking about 400 years from now. People will see us as this odd bridge creatures that sort of knew what they were doing. And yet compared to 400 years from now, the ones wandering this planet, if indeed it survives, will not see us as anything other than, well, a little understated, to be generous.
I love where you're headed with that thinking, because I always would poo-poo and laugh. Come on, we're always going to be here. We're not going to be that stupid. I think we can be that stupid. I think we can cease to exist. I think we have it in our own power now to actually make enough stupid decisions where we will go away. The planet lives on. Animals, flora and fauna, there's no reason that we actually have to hang around. It's up to us how we behave. But I think we will look back if we are around in 300 and 400 years, and that would be a big victory. And I think a remarkable thing. If we are, we're going to look back at ourselves as strangely primitive and say, I cannot believe we got here. Look at those moments in time. We might look at Cuban Missile Crisis right now, but if look at those moments in time in 2090 and 2150 and how we got so close to the brink and we were right on the line. How did we get through those crises? I don't know if you've ever read Isaac Asimov, but in the Foundation series, there were these moments of crisis that had to be solved. And Asimov wrote extensively about these moments. And we're going to look back at these, man, how did we get through that one? Because that really was a crisis. It'll be up to us to get through them. And if we do, we won't recognize the humans. We'll have chips. We'll be part machine. And that isn't even me. I'm not even trying to be science fiction about this. It's happening now. There are chips in brains today that people are playing video games and controlling them with the chip in their brain. And I'm not trying to be crazy, but it's already happening today with some of these incredible innovations. Imagine 100 years now. It's inconceivable that we won't have integrated with with technology.
Absolutely. And PJ, one of your businesses, you're in the healthcare business.
Yeah.
You help people walk with artificial
Well, it won't be
knees.
needed. It won't be needed. But what we do to help people recover from knee surgery won't be needed. There will be no knee replacement surgeries. We will have fixed it with CRISPR. We'll fix it with gene editing. We will fix it with all kinds of other technologies. There will be no orthopedic surgeons. You will not need them. So many things that the surgeons make a lot of money in the hospital. Forget it. We're on the edge now of just not needing so many drugs and technologies that we think are giant innovations that are necessary to today's life.
So consider this as we move toward the top of the hour that has gone so fast.
Running out of time, man.
We just zipped along as we always do. We've been doing these kind of conversations for more than 20
Amazing,
years.
man.
Honestly, if indeed we do arrive 400 years from now in a place that has some harmony, we've worked out all of these rugged issues that we are dealing with. If we manage as humans to work our way to a place like that, consider this. We, you and I, and the rest of the people listening to this show and those on the earth right now will be given credit for laying the foundation that made that happen. We may not be as bleak and stupid as people try to make us believe
I might try to make us. Yeah, you're right.
I mean, we do some. I mean, let me tell you personally, I've done a lot of stupid things in my time. I can go down the list.
But you're still here.
I'm still talking to you. But I've done a lot of stupid things. So stupidity is a bit like all of the other states of being humanity has. I can be stupid this hour, and I can be genius the next hour, and I can be sleeping and dreaming the next hour. And they all three factor into a collective situation that makes me who I am, and anybody listening makes you who you are. That is really hopeful. Maybe the stupidity part is just an essential element in the making of the complete human experience.
We wouldn't be as brilliant. We wouldn't accomplish the same things if we didn't have the foundation that the good and the bad, the eras that were the mass killings and mass new drugs. And, it's all part of that same soup that has made us here on this show today. And we'll look at this era as a transformative time. We all know that. We know that we're living in maybe the most remarkable time ever today in early August in 2025. This may be the most remarkable day in human history, and tomorrow might even be more remarkable because of these changes. I will just say the words, and I know we're almost out of time here. We have never, as creatures, invested as much capital and resources and energy into anything ever as we have done in the last 6 months with AI. We spent, I've heard this isn't a verified number, but let's pretend it's true. I've read recently, we spent as much on AI in the last 6 months as our entire consumer spending. We spent as much or more on AI as all Americans have spent on buying McDonald's and going to the store and putting air conditioning in their homes. The amount of money that is funneling into one thing, this transformative thing, is so vast. It's never, ever been done in any fashion before. And it's being done in a very short period of time. And it is changing everything. So we're unique in our existence in this one moment, 2020 to 2025, 6, 7, 8. Never has humanity done anything as focused as what we're doing right now with AI.
And for some reason, collectively, we are willing to take that big risk because it can go in a million different directions. You and I know that because we've been engaged with this conversation for ages. And yet we're taking that risk. This could be the species collective consciousness aware that this crazy movement in a direction that we've never been before is the portal that will take us where we need to go, good or bad. We don't know what the outcome will be. So when you hear a lot of people talk about AI, they say, oh my God, it's going to destroy the world. It's just the worst thing on earth. And it's using up all the energy and it's sucking all this and sucking all that. And it's making me an idiot. And it's making me dumb. Other people going like, my God. And the scientists I know are going, my God, can you believe what this will do? I cannot stand myself. I'm so excited, they say. So here we are, the species, 8 billion. Not everybody's doing it. And we acknowledge that there's a lot in the world that's really problematic right now. Wars, destruction, death, political upheaval, et cetera, et cetera. All that's out there. The field is not just a field full of beautiful French flowers on a June day in the south of France. No, there are some creatures crawling around below those flowers. That said, we may be doing an instinctive move on the human's part to risk everything to put us through a portal that could take us to that 400 years later.
And without an economic system that rewarded that, it wouldn't happen. If we lived in a purely communist country or our system didn't reward risks, we wouldn't be going through this. So the incredible uneven nature of capitalism. We know that the poor are getting poorer, the rich are getting richer, and it's very incongruous what's going on. But without the big rewards, we wouldn't have the big risk, and Microsoft wouldn't be putting 20 billion into this and 50 billion over there and trillions of dollars being spent. So this uneven nature of our pure capitalist, aggressive investment, I want to be rich, is a driving force behind the greatest achievement of mankind technology-wise that we could ever have imagined. And you look at Industrial Revolution, you look at those moments in time, the fire, the wheel, the da-da-da-da, Alexander Graham Bell, the computer chip. Again, all of those things understood, let's say, this is the big moment. This is the one.
And the great contradiction, the Chinese are building AI out as much as Americans are building it out, as much as anybody
100%.
else. And Chinese are pure communists operating in a pure capitalistic relationship with the world. And I don't know how they
complicated that
do
one,
it,
isn't it? Yeah.
But it's capitalism that's driving the Chinese.
It's capitalism. Yeah. Acknowledging that they're in a system that's different than ours. It is competitive capitalism with us, the East and the West, that is driving that nation to do what it's doing.
And so, PJ, we have arrived at the top of the time when we have to say goodbye. And for a couple of guys who weren't going to be talking political conversation,
shoot, I didn't mean to do that. That was not. I had other topics too that I thought we were going to talk about. So, well, anyways, well done.
Well, we can come at it. We can do this again and again and again. I could go on, and I certainly can have you back, and we can talk about other topics. But for now, let's just say goodbye because the hour arrives.
Time just passed. Felt like we just started. Amazing, man. Thanks so much for having me. I love the conversation. You never know where it's going to go, and that's just beautiful.
And there you go, my friends. Thus concludes my conversation with PJ Ewing. I hope you enjoyed it. I'm proud to say this show airs every weekend on WPVM-FM in Asheville and on KCEI-FM, Cultural Energy Radio in Taos. Thank you, Walter Parks, for our theme song. If you would like to reach me, Navé at jamesnavé.com. Navé is spelled N-A-V-E. Here's one last good note for you. My creative collaborator, Allegra Houston, and I have developed a system of writing we call the Imaginative Storm. You guessed it, it's all about using your imagination to energize your writing. When you go to imaginativestorm.com, you will find free workshops on Zoom that happen on Thursdays and Saturdays every week. You will also find live workshops we do in person in places like Asheville and Taos, and we also do longer, more extensive deep dives into the writing process through our book, Write What You Don't Know. What you don't know is waiting for you to know, and that's how you learn new things. Go to imaginativestorm.com for all your writing, thinking, and dreaming needs. And on that note, thanks again for tuning in. I really do appreciate it. I do hope you come back sometime soon. And until then, maybe I'll catch you on that turnaround somewhere down the line.